Welcome back, friends. In today's video, we're going to talk about URL filtering. URL filtering is one of those fundamental firewall technologies that almost every customer with a security device enables. On the surface, there's not much to it. We want to block a user from going to a specific category of websites on the internet. In this video, we're going to take a deeper look into how URL filtering actually works, the different techniques that firewall vendors take to implement this into their product, the pros and cons of each approach, and then we'll go into a lab exercise of configuring this in our pfSense firewall. We'll validate that it's working correctly, and then I'll even show you how users may be able to bypass this functionality in your environment. We're going to cover all of this in the next 10 or 15 minutes and hopefully answer any questions you have about URL filtering. So let's get started. Before we go into how URL filtering actually works, we need to first understand what happens when a user navigates to a website in their web browser. First step is the DNS lookup. DNS is the process of resolving a domain to IP address. First thing that happens is a user will input, in this case, uprootnetworks.com into their web browser. Our laptop then talks to a DNS resolver. The DNS resolver has communication with the root server, the TLD server, and the DNS authoritative servers to determine the IP address for a given domain. Our root server will tell us who the authoritative servers are. Our TLD server will have all of the information related to that top-level domain, or TLD, which in this case is .com. And then our authoritative server will give us the IP information needed to resolve uprootnetworks.com to an IP. Once we receive that information, our laptop can then communicate directly to the web server. Once we have the IP information, our laptop then will look to form a TCP connection. Majority of web traffic is going to be HTTP or HTTPS based. There are some scenarios where a protocol called QUIC, which is UDP based web communication, is used. This protocol was developed by Google. We're not going to spend too much time on it here. It does throw a wrench into how to enforce security policy in a lot of different cases because firewalls are primarily built around TCP communication. In order to form a TCP relationship, our laptop will first send a TCP SYN packet towards the IP address that we received during the DNS resolution. This TCP SYN packet is saying, hey, are you there? I'd like to start a connection with you, destination IP address. The server will respond with a TCP SYN ACK saying, I'm here, are you ready? I've got your message, and yes, I am ready to talk to you. Lastly, the TCP ACK is us telling the server, great, let's talk, connection confirmed. At this point, the TCP session is established. We will then look to encrypt the session using TLS for our web communication. And lastly, that's where the TLS handshake comes into play. TLS, or Transport Layer Security, is an evolution of SSL, Secure Socket Layer. So a lot of times you will hear this used interchangeably, but in this case we're going to talk through the TLS handshake and explicitly TLS 1.2. So TLS 1.2 is the primary encryption method that's still used across the web today. We are at TLS 1.3, but there are some dependencies here, and there are ways that TLS 1.3 could break URL filtering in the future, or at least in the way that we enforce it today. We'll cover that later in the video. So the first thing that happens here is the client sends a ClientHello message towards the server. It says, hi, I want to talk securely. Here's the encryption methods that I support. In addition, here's the SNI, or server name indicator, that I'm looking for. In this case, our SNI is uprootnetworks.com. This is sent in plain text because at this point we have not formed this encrypted relationship. That comes after the TLS handshake completes. After the client hello, the server responds with the server hello, which says, here is the highest mutually supported encryption method that I support. Let's use this to encrypt our session. In addition, here is my certificate, which proves that I am who I say I am. So your laptop inspects this certificate and checks to make sure that the SNI is correct or matches the domain that we're looking for, in our case, uprootnetworks.com, and then also checks to see if the certificate is signed by a trusted certificate authority, or CA. So your laptops have root CAs installed from the factory, which say these are trusted sources, and if you receive certificates signed by these CAs, you can trust them. If the website is using a certificate which is self-signed and not by a certificate authority in your trust store, that is where you would see errors that say something along the line of proceed with caution, someone could be watching your session, accept to continue, and so on. The client then sends a pre-master secret towards the server. This is the beginning of our key exchange. This is where our client and server work together to agree on a shared secret key. It's important to note here that we're using asymmetric encryption, meaning a combination of a public key and a private key used to create or agree upon a shared secret. And because of this, we're not going to send the private key on the wire, meaning that even if someone is watching, they cannot derive our shared secret key and decrypt our session or extract our payload. Once this handshake completes, both sides are ready to talk privately, and both will send a finished message, which is encrypted using that new shared secret key. This confirms that they both derive the same key and that they're ready for encrypted communication. After this, all subsequent data traffic is encrypted end-to-end for the duration of our HTTPS or TLS session. So if we take a step back, there are 3 main steps that occur before we encrypt our traffic. Once traffic is encrypted, we need some sort of proxy solution to decrypt traffic. But majority of firewalls support URL filtering without decryption, meaning that we don't have to have a proxy or SSL decryption, TLS decryption enabled in order to enforce URL filtering. If we think about it, that means that we have to be able to do this before the session itself is encrypted. So looking at our 3 steps, we know about uprootnetworks.com, our domain, in 2 out of the 3. In our DNS request, our laptop is talking to a DNS server in plain text saying, "Who is uprootnetworks.com?" And then in the TCP session, this is general TCP traffic. So we're sending SYN, SYNAC, ACK. There's nothing here related to our domain that we are browsing to. However, in step 3, our first step in the TLS handshake is sending this client hello. Our client hello is plain text and also includes our server name indicator, or SNI, again, which is uprootnetworks.com. So if we look at how vendors implement URL filtering in their own products, it's primarily using one of these 2 methods, DNS or SNI. Identifying the domain is only a part of the process. Once your firewall has identified what domain a user is browsing to, it typically will reference a database. Now this could be a third-party database supplied by BrightCloud, Alpha Mountain, or zVelo as an example. It could also be a database that is maintained by the firewall vendor themselves. Typically, the firewall will extract the domain information and then reference this database to determine what category that domain belongs to. That category is then called in policy and said to either allow or deny traffic to this specific category. So starting with DNS-based filtering, we can take a look at an example of how this works. A user first will send a DNS query to its DNS resolver, which in our case is the firewall. It says, "Give me the IP information for uprootnetworks.com." Our firewall then takes that domain and forwards it to the database, either in the cloud or on board, and says, "Is uprootnetworks.com in an allowed category?" That database will say, in this case, yes. At that point, our DNS resolver forwards the DNS request to the authoritative server and says, "I need an IP for uprootnetworks.com." And the authoritative server then returns that IP address, which is sent back to the customer. Pros with DNS-based filtering. So usually this is just an extension of DNS filtering, which is a function of the firewall. DNS-based filtering also allows us to easily support captive portal or block page without the need for any sort of decryption. It's unaffected by the QUIC protocol as well as TLS 1.3, both of which support Encrypted ClientHello or ECH. So if we go back and we look at an example where we want to block a specific domain or a category, it's the same process. The user sends the DNS query to the DNS resolver saying, "I need the IP information for uprootnetworks.com." We reference the database says it is in category X, which we are not allowing in policy. The DNS resolver then returns a spoofed IP address for our captive portal or our block page. And the user is able to see that block page in the browser, which says, "This is blocked by your administrator. If you feel this is an error, feel free to contact them." We'll look at SNI-based filtering here in a little bit, which does not support this natively. Other things to consider though with DNS-based filtering, for maximum effectiveness, you need to have DNS proxy enabled. If you have a user setting a static DNS server within their network settings, they may be able to bypass the firewall, which we'll show you later in our lab exercise. You also need to look out for clients who are using DNS over HTTPS or DNS over TLS. Clients may be able to download an agent which encrypts this DNS communication, and we would not be able to inspect it with our firewall. An easy way to avoid this is putting policies in place blocking DNS over HTTPS and DNS over TLS. However, most firewalls categorize this as an application, so you have to have a firewall which supports application-based filtering. DNS-based filtering also does not support full path URLs, as the DNS request only includes the fully qualified domain name. And from my past experiences, DNS filtering may or may not support a wildcard match. So as an example, if you wanted to block subdomains, and so every subdomain that was .microsoft.com you wanted to deny, you may not be able to specify that. You would just have to block the parent domain Microsoft.com as a whole, which may or may not fit into your use case. Now, if we take a look at SNI-based filtering, enforcement is similar, except in this case, we're taking a look at the TLS handshake. So client sends a TLS client hello to the web server, and our firewall passively inspects that. It extracts the server name indicator indicator, or SNI, from the client hello message and says, hey, I'm about to forward this, but I see uprootnetworks.com as our SNI. Is this acceptable? Again, our third-party database says, yes, it is, and we forward that to the web server. The web server then responds back with a server hello message. The pro here is that, again, we do not need any sort of TLS decryption because we can see the SNI in that client hello message prior to the session becoming encrypted. Another advantage here is that we don't have to put policies in place to block DNS over HTTPS or DNS over TLS. We also don't have to worry about enabling any sort of proxy config for DNS proxy or TLS proxy. However, there are some drawbacks. So when we look at the ways that user experience differs from SNI versus DNS based filtering, one of the main ones is that when we see a packet being dropped, it is typically a silent drop in that it's not going to redirect a user to a captive portal. They would simply just see that they're unable to load a web page. And this is because we are not acting as an HTTPS proxy unless that is explicitly enabled. In order for us to display a captive portal or a block page using SNI based filtering, we have to be acting as a web proxy where we emulate the web server and terminate the TLS handshake. In addition, SNI-based filtering suffers from weakened efficacy as we progress into TLS 1.3 and Encrypted ClientHello, or ECH, which I'll talk about here in a second. So more than likely, we're going to need additional ways to detect what websites a user is going to, either using HTTP metadata, JA3, JA4, TLS fingerprinting, and so on. So looking at TLS 1.3 and Encrypted ClientHello, which I've mentioned a couple times up until now, SNI-based filtering is still supported within TLS 1.3. Obviously, it's still supported on the DNS side as well because that's separate from our TLS handshake. However, there's an extension with TLS 1.3 called Encrypted ClientHello, which will break the SNI filtering. Because when we see the client hello message, the payload or the content within that client hello is already encrypted, and all we would see is a covered domain. Most of the time is going to be a CDN or a service like Cloudflare. However, ECH does require server-side configuration as well, and because of that, it's not widely deployed today. What I've seen with some customers, in order to overcome the DNS over TLS, DNS over HTTPS, and some of these TLS 1.3 extensions, is they simply block these within their firewall. Like I said earlier, you can block DOT and DOH within an application-based policy in your firewall. You can also enable SSL inspection, which would deny TLS 1.3 traffic and knock it back down to TLS 1.2, which would force your clients to fall back to methods that are supported by your firewall today. This is not an ideal solution. It's kind of what I view as a workaround, but I am sure that vendors will come up with new ways to inspect and enforce policy as we progress down this TLS 1.3 and ECH timeline. Now the fun part. We're going to go through and configure DNS filtering or DNS-based URL filtering within pfSense. Do you not already have a pfSense lab set up and you would like to set one up? You can check out one of my other videos below where I go through how to configure this within Proxmox. If you do already have it set up, we'll go to our pfSense IP address, the management IP, and we'll log in. First thing we want to do is install the DNS filtering package. So pfSense supports multiple third-party packages. It is an open source firewall, or at least started as an open source firewall. So there are a bunch of different packages out there that we can install on top of pfSense. We'll come into System and then Package Manager. And we'll go to Available Packages. This will take a second to load, and then we will want to find pfBlocker. So we'll scroll down here to pfBlocker NG, and we'll click Install. Confirm, and we'll wait for this to complete installation. Once the installation is complete, we can come to Firewall and then pfBlocker NG. We want to make sure that this is enabled, which it should be by default. And for now, we are going to leave all of the settings as default. We'll go to DNSBL or DNS blocker. We want to enable DNS blocker. In my case, I'm going to leave the virtual IP address as the default value of 10.10.10.1. This is the IP address that we will redirect a user to if we decide to block them from viewing a specific category or website. So as we talked about earlier, the user will see a captive portal. This is the IP address of the captive portal. This is a fake IP address, but we have to return something in order to redirect. We'll leave the rest of this the same. I will then come into DNS block category. I want to enable blacklist category, and you want to select the second option here. I was messing around with the first option and I was seeing error messages during the update. So this tells me that this is no longer maintained. And from what I saw, this is the evolution of this first service. So we'll select the second service here. We will then come down to UT1 and we can select what categories we want to block. So in my case, I want to block gambling categories. I will save the configuration. You can then go to update. You could say reload, DNS blocker, run. This will show you the logs of us reloading the configuration and implementing our policy to block gambling. Once this process is complete, we can test this by going to our machine which is connected to the firewall. I'm going to use Kali Linux since it has a GUI. I'll come into the console and I will open up my web browser. I want to make sure that I am able to browse out to the internet, so we can take a test website here. See, I'm able to browse to espn.com. Now when I try to go to a gambling website, so we'll use DraftKings.com, we see site blocked via DNSBL or DNS blocker. Referrer unknown, client IP address, this is my IP, and this is because it has hit UT1 gambling category. Powered by PF blocker. This is displayed because we are using DNS based filtering and are able to return a spoofed IP address to redirect the client to that destination IP. Like I said earlier in the video, if we're using SNI based filtering, this would not work. And that is because the client is attempting to communicate with the web server IP address which was received during the DNS resolution. So if we return the real IP address and then redirect to that web server, we send the TLS ClientHello, which is where we pull out the server name indicator or SNI. At that point, we've already bypassed the ability to redirect. So in order to implement captive portal or this block page you see here with SNI based filtering, you have to have HTTPS proxy or TLS proxy enabled. One thing I want to show you here in the terminal, if I do an NS lookup on espn.com, we see that I'm using this as my DNS server and we see the IP address is returned from espn.com. If I do an NS lookup for FanDuel.com, we see that using the same server, the address returned is 10.10.10.1, which if you remember is that IP address set in our DNS blocker config for the captive portal. Now, a way a user may be able to bypass this, so if they come into their system settings and they change their network adapter, so here I come in, click settings, I can update my DNS server to use Google DNS. I'll then restart my network adapter for the changes to take effect. And then I can see when I attempt to do an NS lookup on FanDuel.com, instead of hitting that captive portal, even though DNS blocker is still being enforced, because I am not using that firewall as my DNS resolver, I'm using Google DNS, I am able to resolve FanDuel.com and I can browse to these different websites. So again, I can come in and go FanDuel.com and load FanDuel.com, bypassing my DNS filter. In order to overcome this from the firewall admin side, we need to enable DNS proxy, which then says everything coming into me on UDP port 53, I want to capture and proxy that DNS request outbound, which will prevent users from being able to bypass the DNS server set on my network. However, we also need to block DNS over HTTPS and DNS over TLS for this to be most effective. Otherwise, users could again download an encrypted DNS client and bypass our DNS filtering. I hope you found this video useful. Be sure to like and subscribe so that you can keep up with my future lab exercises.